to just kind of hear from our panelists a little bit about their stories and their experiences, and just to be part of the conversation. One of the things that we're really loving about this format is that it's interactive, right? So you all can jump on the chat and share comments with us and ask questions of our panelists, and kind of be part of the conversation. This is not like a lecture or a teaching. We're not talking at you. We're just simply having a girlfriend chat, and we love for you all to be part of that conversation. My co-founder, Tina, is going to be monitoring the chat just so that I'm not like all over the place trying to talk to our guests and monitor the chat. So feel free to put questions and comments there for her. We do have 3 panelists who are scheduled to be with us. We're going to jump right in and get started just to be mindful of you all's time. And then she will just join us when she had a little situation, and once that gets resolved, then she will join us. So without further ado, let me tell you all a little bit about Black Girl Fin Magic. So Black Girl Fin Magic started off as just a random idea, actually, of getting women of color together who were in the personal finance space. I went to a conference and I realized I didn't know a lot of women in this space, and I had felt alone, like I was one of none who was doing this work. And so when I met all these amazing women, I just felt like we needed to know each other, right? So that we could collaborate, support each other, and promote each other. And so that was the genesis of Black Girl Fin Magic, a networking group where women of color in the personal finance space could come together, promote, support, and help each other grow our businesses. And we started off with about 30 women back in 2017, and now here we are, 2019, and we have over 250 women who have joined in with us to just be part of this amazing sisterhood of support. And so today, what we're going to talk about is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to Deborah's heart, so I'm super excited to hear her comments tonight. But our topic for tonight is, I am not your superwoman. And I know, especially as entrepreneurs, we know what that's like, right? We try to do everything ourselves. We try to carry the weight of the world. We try to jump over tall buildings in a single bound. And yet, we are not always doing ourselves the same service that we try to give to everyone else. And so tonight's topic is just really going to be about that, our experiences, and kind of some practical tips on how we can manage, if you will, this superwoman syndrome. So what I'm going to do, Deborah, I know you got some great comments on this topic. I'm going to start with Kassandra because she has done some really cool things as well. And Kassandra I'm just really looking forward to hearing a little bit about her story as well. So Kassandra, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your experience being a superwoman.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me here tonight. It's really a pleasure. And my name is Kassandra Dasent. I am the founder and CEO of Minding Your Money. Essentially, I bridge the gap between financial literacy and emotional awareness and intelligence, so the two combined can help people to make more forward-thinking choices about their financial decisions. In terms of the superwoman complex, I'm definitely a victim, and I've definitely overcome it to a large degree. However, in terms of mental health, I can definitely relate my personal experiences dealing with anxiety and depression, and now still living with that and managing to keep that at bay and still running a company. So the challenges can be overwhelming, and it does filter into your personal life as well. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and putting my 2 cents worth into the discussion and being able to help people along as well.
Awesome. Deborah. So for those of you, hey, so those of you who don't know, but I have been stalking Deborah on social media for about 2 years now. All of her LinkedIn posts have just been so encouraging and so motivating, and I have just really enjoyed watching the things that she's doing in the space of personal finance. So this is my honor, Deborah, to have you on our show tonight. And the topic actually came from an article that Deborah wrote. So Deborah, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, and then without giving too much of the goodies away, tell us a little bit about your experience as a superwoman, and then we'll talk more in a moment.
Well, you know, it's interesting. So I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and I teach women how to overcome their financial fears, learn how to invest, and build wealth. And so my whole focus of the work that I do really is on eradicating the wealth gap for women and minorities. And, you know, I am one who is always espousing to women, you know, the need, don't give from a half empty purse. You know, you got to take care of yourself, and you're not helping people because you become an enabler in many regards. And I think that is particularly evident for women of color. I think that our culture kind of supports this superwoman role that we often, I don't want to say find ourselves in. I think, to be honest with you, after coaching thousands of women, our network, our circle, it kind of supports that, being a martyr. And so last year, I had something really tragic and dramatic happen to me that really caused me to, you know, take a look inwardly, you know, like in the mirror, saying, well, what are you doing? You know, you're allowing all of women to put themselves first, make themselves a priority. And yet you were, you know, I found myself just really moving beyond what was healthy for me. And, you know, all of the different signs pointed to that. So I'm excited to be having this conversation. It took me months to really talk about what had happened.
Wow.
But I've just been so gratified by the responses that I got to that blog post that I wrote about being a superwoman, how being a superwoman almost killed me. And so I am definitely excited about having this conversation this evening.
Great, thank you. And we're happy to have you. Nicole, how are you? I'm gonna need you to check your volume because I can barely hear you. Okay, I still can't hear you. Work on the technical side on your end, and then whenever you think it's working, just start talking out. Wait, say that again. No, okay. Maybe Tina can work with you on getting the audio. While we get Nicole's audio taken care of, Kassandra, tell us a little bit about kind of when you had that aha moment, when you felt like you were, like Deborah said, you were walking in this superwoman space, and that your environment actually encouraged you to do so. When did you have that moment?
So I think I've been dealing with this for a long, long time. So as someone who's in my early 40s, you know, I'm a Gen Xer. I am a long distance caregiver. I'm a long distance step parent. My husband travels a lot for work. I am a professional. Before I started my company, I was a software engineer for an engineering firm. So I was the only female Black woman leading a team of software engineers across the country. So put all that together, it will create a recipe for, unfortunately, mental health disaster, which is what happened to me. Just having to be, you know, we say be everything to everybody all the time. That was me. I was constantly on. I even in my sleep, you know, I was constantly waking up with thoughts of, okay, what did I miss today? What do I need to do for tomorrow, the next week, and the week after? Because everybody just decided that I am going to be the one who's going to solve all of their problems. And I enabled that. When I was able to look back and step back, I created that need, We like to, it's so easy to blame everybody, but we have to own what our part of the problem is, right? And I had to own the fact that in a way I fed off that need of being needed, right? And so in some ways, my mother, for example, she's in her 80s, she has her ailments. We went through a very difficult situation where I nearly lost her. And I was literally having to fly back. At the time I was living in Michigan, Montreal, Michigan, still working remotely, working till 2 a.m, then getting up, going to the hospital, being with her, and still trying to run my house, still trying to make sure that bills are paid. And it just doesn't stop, right? At some point you break. And what I hope today is we can help encourage people not to reach that breaking point, that we can serve as examples of how we can help them to recognize that you're in a danger zone and what we can do to empower you and to let you know what remedies there are before you fall off the cliff, because you don't want that to happen, because it took me a couple of years to put myself back together, literally, like Humpty Dumpty. And you're forever changed, to be honest. It really does change you. And you have to be so guarded and protect your well-being, because it's very easy to slip back into that way of thinking and being and operating.
Did we lose her?
I believe we did.
Well, hi, ladies. How are you? I'm Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Good. I admire your work so much with both you and what you guys do. So very excited to be on this live with you guys.
Likewise. It's a pleasure.
I guess we'll just wait for her to dial back in.
Yeah, I think actually, if you wanted to introduce yourself, since Deborah and I had a chance to just give ourselves like a little intro to everybody. So if you wanted to tackle that in the meantime.
Okay. Are we still live with
we are still live, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's back. Sure. There we go. Okay.
Hi. Just a little technical difficulty. But yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Dr. Nicole Garner Scott. I am the founder of Am Not Financial Services. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I have been in the entrepreneur space for 14, going on 15 years now. And entered into the entrepreneur space through my PR agency. From my PR agency, I started an organization called 100 Female Entrepreneurs, which really helps women scale their businesses and make their businesses profitable. Through that business and doing a lot of business coaching, I started to realize that a lot of the women that I was serving had much deeper issues. It started off being a call on, what can they do about their business? And then it would change to, hey, Nicole, I'm really about to lose my house, or I took the entrepreneurial jump and I'm about to, be evicted from my boutique or whatnot. And I started realizing that I could serve better in a financial space and really helping women understand some of the basics and things that a lot of us, take for granted or whatnot. But if you didn't have those conversations in your home and you don't necessarily have a certified financial manager or whatnot, then you aren't really having a lot of those conversations. And a lot of us unfortunately feel like we can financially manage a business even though we can't financially manage our homes, and all of that usually comes to to a head at some point or another. So that pretty much spawned my passion with Am Not Financial, and this conversation means a lot to me. I recently had a baby. He's 9 months old now, and so
congratulations.
So dealing with Superwoman syndrome is an everyday struggle in some forms or fashion. So very excited to be here and to discuss that.
Awesome. So Deborah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? So where the article came from that you wrote, that's where I grabbed this topic from. So for those of you who are watching, May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And when I read Deborah's post on LinkedIn, it was like, I know exactly what we're talking about in the month of May, because this, like you said, Kassandra, this connects with mental health. This Superwoman syndrome connects directly with mental health. And so often, we put this topic on the back burner. This is something that we don't want to deal with. And so, Deborah, your article really just was the opportunity, whatever you're comfortable sharing with the audience about kind of what you included in that post. Let us paint the picture for us of how that all came together for you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's on my blog now. And if people want to go and actually read the blog, they can go to deborahowens.com, or they can go on, hit me up on LinkedIn as well, because I kind of post through all those platforms. But the title of the blog was How Playing Superwoman Almost Killed Me. And, I had been working a lot of hours, and for some reason I was having insomnia. I was just finding it difficult to sleep. And so, as an entrepreneur, when you can't sleep, you're like, well, I might as well be working, right? Not recognizing that, no, you need your sleep. Right. And so, I had gotten up really early that morning, and my daughter she lives in New York, but she had taken my car. And I decided to go to support a colleague who was doing a pitch competition. I live in Maryland, and this was in DC, so about 45 minutes away. And it was really warm that day. And so I had maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I'd been at the convention center all day, kind of waiting around, standing. And I went and kind of saw a lot of people I knew, connected with them, and then headed home. And I wasn't in my car, it was in my husband's car. It was really hot out, and his car is, a luxury car mobile, and I'm always nervous driving his car anyway, because I don't, cars aren't my thing. But long story short, I'm home, it's really warm, but I had the air conditioning on, and that was bothering me. And so I turned the air conditioning off, and literally a couple of blocks from my home, I blacked out and literally drove into a tree, right?
Wow. And
so totaled the car. I mean, when I got out of that car, my neighbors, they were like so shocked that I got out of it alive, And my poor husband, I mean, he was like, well, what happened? I mean, did you fall asleep? And I didn't really know. So when I went to see my doctor, she was like, well, a number of different things could have happened, but I'm glad you're okay. And that, it took me like a week to really process it, but I had been burnt. That wasn't just that night. That was, months of just burning the candle at both ends, feeling like, I can do it. I don't need sleep. Well, I'll catch up on it. And, unfortunately, what it costed me to really think about is my behavior, right? So, you're not doing this, you don't have balance in your life. You're not, getting the proper sleep. Your diet needs to be, I had stopped going to see my trainer. I mean, all of those things really compounded, with the result being something that tragic happening. And so I wrote that article because I wanted to just share, that it made me recognize, one, I have to practice what I'm preaching. Here I am coaching women, telling them to have balance, don't give from a half empty purse, all of these different things. Well, I wasn't walking that talk. And, I think the most powerful thing that I try to treat women through wealth coaching is, that no is a complete sentence. But it's very difficult to say no when you haven't said what you want to say yes to yourself. And so that really is having a future vision around who you want to be. Um, then it allows you, once you've committed to yourself and your future, to say no. And so, that's what I think is critical for women, is that we begin to understand that we don't serve others when we're not taking care of ourselves, because I guess the
Right.
frightening thing for me, right, was, man, my kids, my husband, here I am thinking I'm doing all of these things. And if I'm not careful, I won't be here. And so that is the reality of it. We must practice self-care and take care of ourselves, or we're not going to be good for
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and when I read that, I immediately saw myself in that post, burning the candle on both ends, trying to keep doing so many things and neglecting adequate rest and neglecting healthy living. And it was an eye opener for me. It was like, oh my gosh, this is real. You've got to do better, Brandy. So thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing that, because I know if it touched me, I fully believe that it touched other people, which kind of spawned this whole conversation. Nicole, oh, you got your handsome guy there. Tell us a little bit about your experience. I know you work with women, like you said, who are building businesses and their entrepreneurial journey. So you have probably worked with a lot of women who have experienced some of the burnout of trying. Tell us.
I think your screen froze a little bit, but I think I understood the question that you were about to ask. Just my own experience with burnout, and I guess just how I deal with that now. So I think that I come from a generation where everyone used to say, you'll sleep when you, and that you will you're supposed to burn yourself out. Like that was, being a Black woman, you got to work twice as hard and twice as long. And those were the things that were instilled in me as I was growing up. And so that kind of laid the beginning blueprint for how I even approached working in life and everything else. And I remember being in my late 20s, and I had gained a tremendous amount of weight, and was missing out on life completely, like missing out on my friends having children, missing weddings, missing family events, just, all in the name of building business and, taking every advantage that I could. And my mentor told me, what is the point of creating this dream business if you're not around, living and prosperous to see it come to fruition? And so that was a big wake up call for me, that I needed to start to prioritize life. And there are a few different things that I do. I had the pleasure of going to a luncheon a few years ago with Lisa Price, who's the founder of Carol's Daughter. And during her speech, she talked about how um, some days you might be the best businesswoman you could be. Some days you might be the best mother you could be. Some days you might be the best wife you can be. All those days might not be on the same day, and you have to give yourself grace.
Yes.
And and so that is something I really approach life with, just giving myself grace. Especially after having my son, I feel like I used to could do so much more and move at such a faster speed. And now with him, me really wanting to be present with him and not necessarily, being someone who does a million things at one time. Um, I just have had grace with myself. Like this is what I can do now at this stage of my life, and it's okay. And so that helped me out a lot. And then also I follow this theory. It's called Live in the Gray. I'm sorry, he just pulled out my earphones. But yeah, it's called Live in the Gray. He's like, you know what, Mom? I'm not here for your interview today. But yeah, it's called Live in the Gray, and basically there's no way to give equal split to everything in your life. So when there's opportunities to combine things in your life, do so. So instead of saying, okay, well, I'll spend 50% of my time doing work, 50% of my time doing home, it's like, where can I combine those opportunities in my life? So sometimes when I'm doing events, I'll invite my family to it, and it's a chance for us to spend time together and make that happen. Or if I'm doing if I'm traveling for work, I might extend my trip by a few more days and add a vacation on to the end of it. So just different things that I do to make sure that I live in the gray, per se, and not keep everything so black and white.
I love that. I love that. Live in the gray. Kassandra, we have a question from the audience. Do you feel like there is undue pressure as a woman of color to always be
Without a doubt. Without question, there's a higher standard that we have to live up to, and then there is that interpersonal standard that we set ourselves. So it is double conflict, honestly. And it to be honest, you can't win. You really can't, because at some point both are going to be in conflict. Because when, for example, like running my business, I'll actually give you a real life example. Yesterday, I had a ton of things I wanted to accomplish yesterday. I did all of none. Zero, because my mind and literally my body said no. It was like, no, Kassandra, not like Arya Stark said, not today. Not today. And for the old me would have fought through it. She would have pushed through it. She would have said, you know what, forget what you're thinking and how you're feeling. This has to be done. No, it doesn't have to be done. Right. What is the worst that can happen? You need to reschedule a call. You need to tell this person that, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't meet you today. You need to say whatever that is. 99.9% of the things that we do, we create our own work, especially as entrepreneurs. Right. So we need to kind of take that control back in our life and our schedule, and like Nicole said, give ourselves grace. So yesterday I gave myself a whole day of grace. And you know what? Today I woke up feeling like I could conquer the world. And that's how I'm now, is really almost day by day, and giving myself the opportunity to say, if I know I can't power through this and it's not going to do me any good, why try? And I'm not a failure. That was the other thing. We have to live up to these ideals, whether societal or personal, whether it's family telling you that, well, for example, as Superwoman, I think we've talked about the black tax, and this actually relates to this, because as many of us, we are becoming the primary provider financially in our family. We are also stretching our hands and our dollars to extended family. Like my budget, it's like there's 5 figures of budget that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to others, right? Right. That pressure of being that superwoman, because it's not only about taking care of your own, but it's about, oh my gosh, I've got to worry about Joe and Sally and, Doreen or whoever it is, because they're counting on me. But again, I come back to the point where we have some part to play and some responsibility to own. And sometimes, it, like for Deborah's case, where she physically hit a tree, like this physically manifested. In my case, it did as well. And I ended up having to walk away from my 6-figure corporate job because it was just one huge element of just complete chaos in my mind. And I just could not regain control unless I stepped away. I had to literally walk away in order to regain my soul. Like Deborah wrote a post. I have a post too. It's called Reclaiming My Calling and My Soul. And it was documents this whole process of the 3 years that I suffered through anxiety and depression. Be Miss Superwoman, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to accept failure, but then you also have to see opportunity. This is also an opportunity for everyone who's listening to recognize the signs and the signals and pay attention, because
Yes.
you must matter more than anybody else. If I am
Yes.
tonight, you matter more than anybody.
Absolutely. And if I can
Absolutely.
just speak to that, you know, the point I want to make to women is this, is that you can have it all, just not at the same time. And I think that if you will look at it from that perspective and understand that sometimes saying no to obligation is saying yes to your future.
Wow.
And I just want to speak to the Black tax and the burden that many of us have in terms of taking care of extended family. I do think that, and I know I always get a lot of pushback on this, particularly from women of color, but it is essential that we give intentionally and give responsibly. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we're playing rescuer, what are we getting out of that? Number one. And then second, what we have to realize is that we're not helping. In many cases, we're becoming an enabler.
Wow.
Exactly.
And so what is really, really important, what I mean by give intentionally and giving responsibly, sometimes giving resources that are resources that we can't afford, right, is not helping that person. And really what we need to be giving is assistance and support and helping people figure out and help them take ownership of the situation that they're in. Because our current circumstances are directly correlated to the decisions that we make. And so what happens when we bail people out is they never learn those lessons. And then they continue to make the same mistakes and they don't build that muscle of resilience. So that relates to our children, to our, to our siblings, to our friends. We really want to be careful that at the same time that we're, maybe doing what we believe is fulfilling our obligation, that we're not simply exacerbating a situation. And because the other challenge is that our community and our circle oftentimes supports that behavior. And in the long run, it's helping no one.
Wow. That's a really good
wanted to add to
point.
that really
Go ahead.
quickly, and to what Deborah was saying too. But not only just because she correlated financial and mental health, which is a big part of mental health as well, as so many of us utilize our finances as a point of filling a void. So a lot of us overextend ourselves because we're trying to fulfill a void of that little girl or that little boy inside of us. And so when we are overspending, when we are trying to buy all the toys for our kids that we can have, when we're trying to take the vacation so that we can do it for the gram, when we're trying to do all those different things, it usually is tapping into a void. And a lot of us have to get to a point where we understand our triggers. So when in mental health overall, it's you get to such a good space when you can understand what it is that triggers you. So if social media is a trigger for you and that causes you to go spend money that you don't have or put yourself in a financial bind, then social media is not your friend. Then you have to take that break from social media. If being around family, like my husband comes from a family that spends a lot. And so when we go into that environment, I have to already give him the pep talk. Like, hey, we're in a space right now where we're saving, we're, putting things, we're doing college funds, we're doing, all these different things. So who has the newest car and who has some of the other newest things is not our priority right now. And you have to feel very good about that. So just having those pep talks with him before we even go into those triggering environments is very key. And then, just a lot of us carry money shame. We carry the shame of, the households that we grew up in, and how was money looked at then. So if your mother was a mother that saved everyone, if she saved all her sisters, if she saved all her children, more than likely that's your relationship with money too. So just understanding that, and breaking the generational curse of being that superwoman is very key as well.
Wow, Nicole, you totally made the perfect segue, because that was exactly what I was thinking of asking you all next. What are some very practical ways that we can break this syndrome? Because we know that we all struggle with it, right? You all are kind of around the same age that I am, and we grew up in the, strong Black woman culture, and we grew up in this. We had to carry the world on our shoulders. And I remember hearing a phrase, my mom, not necessarily, but I would hear the phrase that as a woman of color, you had to be twice as good as everyone else, right? And so we pushed ourselves to these unrealistic limits because that was what our environment told us was needed. And yet now we're seeing all these years later that was detrimental to us. And so now there are women like us who have had this aha moment, right? Women who have, like you said, Kassandra, who have realized, hey, my body and my mind are telling me enough is enough. Women like Deborah who have said, you know what, physically, I'm in a place where I don't even know what happened, but I almost lost it all. And so what are some practical things that women can do? And I'll start with you, Deborah, because you went to the doctor and your doctor said physically she didn't even see anything that was wrong with you, but you knew that something was wrong. So what was that turnaround point for you?
Yeah, but the other interesting part, though, my numbers were crazy, like my blood pressure, cholesterol. She was like, well, what is going on? Right.
Gotcha.
So, the body doesn't lie. And so much of that mental, it transfers to physical, right? And, the cortisol, the stress, all of that, the eating, the cravings, all of that, we're medicating with food. And so I went into the practical aspect of it. And this is something I learned through wealth coaching. So what many people don't realize is, I just started coaching people about 5 years ago in 2014. Up until that, really the business model was more focused on business to business, financial companies, partnering, brand ambassador, things of that sort. And it finally became really clear that what people don't need is information. What they need is accountability and support and helping to apply what that information is to their individuals. And so their individual situation, and one of the things I have learned, and just seeing some of the transformations, women who were giving all of themselves and now are like, no, I've got this future vision for myself, is that the practical application is women have to really look forward and create a vision of what they want their life to look like in the future. Identify what's really important, their highest values, and it's different for everybody, right? It may be family, it may be financial securities, and those things will change depending what stage we are in our lives, right? And then when we make that future vision and come up with some very specific goals and timelines, what it allows us to do is to be committed to that future. And oftentimes when we find ourselves giving too much, it's because we haven't committed to that future. So rather than having a plan for ourselves, we become a part of everybody else's plan. And the power of creating that vision for ourselves, it allows us to say to people, and I think, Nicola, Nicole was a perfect example of that, of saying, well, that pep talk. Well, baby, we got to go to 529 and this, and that. So we can't get caught up in their stuff because we've already got our vision, right? That is the most critical component of being able to take ownership and take power and say yes to your future, is to commit to the future that you want for yourself and your family.
Yes. That's good.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah.
You're
Kassandra, same question to you. What are some practical ways? And then if you can, think of some low cost or free things that folks can do to kind of practice better self-care when they find themselves feeling that superwoman syndrome.
So one of the easiest things, yet it seems like it's the most complicated thing to do, is to spend some time alone. We are constantly inundated with requests to be at this birthday party, show up for this meeting, attend this conference. And the list of expectations goes on and on. And the idea of actually taking time for yourself, and I actually suggest this on a daily, why are you not a priority? Why are you not the first thing that you see in the mirror every morning and you talk to and you get real with yourself? Whether it is, we take the time to pray, we take the time to meditate, but we really don't take the time, as Deborah was saying, to really sit down and just evaluate, who am I? What do I want? Right. What makes me happy? What is not making me happy in this current situation? And then before, then you can start to slowly, take steps towards what you want to fix and how you're going to go to fix it. But before you get to all that, I call it sitting with your pain, sitting with your emotions, just because the culture is that we should not take time to stop because we're going to lose out on things. We're not going to be able to accomplish things. And that's the greatest disservice you can do for yourself. And it's this cheapest thing you can do, is to really just stop.
Yeah, I like it. Good. Thank you. Nicole, what about you? What are some free or low cost ways that women and this superwoman syndrome?
Sure. I would start off with saying, stop living life on the edge, creating buffers for yourself in a multitude of areas. So we have gotten to the point where, we're like a planner driven society. Everybody has these beautiful planners, and we go from 7 a.m. to midnight and fill in every 15 minutes of the day with no buffers, no downtime. It's like you could be, I was talking to one of my girlfriends the other day, and she was like, I actually have an opening between 4:30 and 4:35. I was like, what is that's enough time to use the restroom. But that is the level of just overcompensation that we're doing as women. And I think you have to leave room and create space in your life. You have to create space in your bank account, because something will always happen no matter what. That's life. And when you live financially on the edge, like I was talking to my little nephew the other day, and he's purchasing some things. He's getting ready to go off to college in the fall. And I was like, can you afford it? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, how much money will you have left after you spend it? And he was like, nothing. And I was like, well, you can't afford it. You have to leave a buffer because life will happen in some way, form, or fashion. And that is what causes the superwoman breakdown, when you already know life will happen. You already know things will happen, but you put yourself so far on the edge that you don't give yourself any breathing room. Right. And I always give this example, like we have these big old purses, and we fill these purses up with every single thing that we could think of, 2 phones, planners, 3 things of lipstick, change, food. If you see someone with a big purse, it's like, oh my gosh, what are you carrying around? But all you really need is probably your keys, your phone, some cash and a credit card or whatever that may be. So, just even looking at areas in your life where you just don't allow any breathing room, and you're carrying this high level of weight that is continuously breaking you down each day. So I would say tip number one is just creating some space in your life, giving yourself some breathing room. Another self-care tip that I think is just very important is just learning the power of breathing. um I know that for me, because I have a
Mm.
young son, I can't always get away, or I can't always just up and leave and be like, you know what, today is just all about me and forget you. And he's like, okay, well, how am I going to eat or survive? And so, being, being
Right?
that being that I'm taking yoga and just really subscribe to a lot of things there's just so much power and just sitting still and taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out and settling yourself. When you feel yourself about to get upset, when you're about to send that email that might cost you your job, when you're when you're about to send that text message that might, really impact a friendship or a family relationship, any of those things, just sit there and breathe deeply 10 times in, 10 times out, and it will completely just rebalance where you are.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Kassandra, you made a really good point too about we feel this pressure to be everywhere, at all these events, at all these conferences.
Mm-hmm.
How do you all, they don't know how to say no? So all tactfully say no to all these things when you're asked to show up. Kassandra, you go first.
Sure. I don't commit, in the sense that if someone presents me an opportunity or something, I just say, you know what? I need to just take this back with me, and I need to evaluate whether I can do this for you. If I can't, I will set you up with another solution. In other words, don't say no, but if you say no, come to them with another option. Don't leave them high and dry necessarily, right? But that gives that breathing room, so you don't ever feel compelled that you must say yes on the spot. Don't ever allow anyone to make you feel compelled that you need to give them an answer.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Deborah, what about you?
Well, I really encourage women to learn how to say no nicely. And the way you're able to do that goes back to being committed, right? So when you know if something aligns, it has to align with my values. And I have to really feel like I can add value to situations, right? I don't need to be everything. Everything is not for me. I'm so clear on that, right?
Right.
So when I can't bring my whole self to something, because I have a tendency to want to over deliver. That is just my nature, right? So what I've become very clear on is in order for me to be able to execute at a high level, several things have to align. And when they don't align, it's not serving me or that organization or person to say yes, because I'm going to be half-hearted about it. So, one of the other things I want to get to is not only saying no, but it may be something that you want, but people aren't necessarily valuing what you bring to the table. And so it's important that you negotiate and make it. I'm not going to say things are always a win-win, but I do believe that when you stand up for yourself and when you know your value,
Hello.
then you can much easier say yes or no to situations. So everything's not for everybody, and everything's not for you. Know when it is, and when it's not, say, I can appreciate your thinking of me. However, I'm already committed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see Michelle saying, she says, I can say no very easily nowadays. And she doesn't do coffee meetups anymore or pick your brain sessions. And that's another way I think that sometimes we mismanage our time is when we, in our effort to help others, in our effort to, again, be that superwoman, we give away so much of our time. And like Kassandra was saying earlier, and like you too, Nicole, that's valuable time that we could be using, just having some quiet and some stillness and checking in with ourselves again.
I think
So
too,
go
I was
ahead.
going to add to that too. I think a lot of people pull on your time because they don't necessarily want to do the work. Like they don't want to go to Google themselves, or they don't want to, everybody's looking for a shortcut to the final
Right.
answer. So for women who do have a lot of knowledge, I always suggest creating scalable items for people. Create a book. So whenever every time someone, my direct message fills up with all types of questions, and I always respond back, you can get these answers in my book that's available, on Amazon, or, I have a webinar coming up where I can cater to lots and lots of people at one time without being stretched too far in advance. And then also for me, I like to plan my year accordingly. So I tell people, if you want to have me as a speaker, if you want to get me into some of these things, I need to know 90 days in advance. That's what it says on a lot of my material. So I feel like you kind of train people how to work with you the way that you want them to work with you too.
That's
And
good.
and as soon as you start saying, hey, this is what's required to work with me, if people want to work with you bad enough, they'll get on board.
Wow. I love that 90 days. I'm going to have to put that one into practice myself. Good stuff. Okay, so ladies, we've covered a little bit about your stories as superwomen. We've talked about how we can manage or kind of, not fall into that superwoman complex ourselves. If you were sitting across from a girlfriend and you could look in her eyes and see that she is wrestling with being a superwoman, and you can see that this will not end badly for her, what's one piece of advice that you would share with this person, and keep in mind, this would be a friend of yours. So you may have a little bit more freedom in what you can say to her. But for those in the audience, that might be watching the replay or they may be with us now, we want them to kind of know a takeaway. So what's one piece of advice if you see someone falling into that superwoman syndrome that you would share with her? And whoever wants to go first can go first.
Okay. The power of delegation it's a superpower that every superwoman should use. And I feel like I honestly feel like when you burn yourself out, you do your loved ones a disservice. You do the everyone that you are trying to cater to, you do them a disservice, and you do your gift a disservice by being burnt out. When you're burnt out, you can't even fulfill what it is you're trying to do. Just like Kassandra was saying, yesterday it was a no-go, and today she woke up refreshed and the energy to take over. But if she would have pushed through yesterday, that might have not been her best work. And so many people
Right.
have become so accustomed to not putting out their best work, but then wanting to require the world respect them at a higher level. And I'm like, well, if you're putting out halfway work,
Woo.
then you're getting halfway rates and halfway, I want to say another word, but just
I know what you want to say.
You got that little baby nearby.
but
But
you're
we understand what you're trying to
right.
say.
You're not even going to be able to demand the level of your worth, because you're not even putting out your worth at that full 100%.
Yes.
So I just think it's very important to delegate, understand a team. Micromanagers never win. If you look at some of the most successful people out here, from Oprah to Beyonce to, you know, whoever you might consider to be very successful, they can't do it without teams. I have never seen someone get to a multi-million-dollar business, or you know, whatever it is that you deem to be successful, and it's just them. They show up, their team shows up, and then they show up just to put the cherry on top. So, so that's just
Now
very
say, Nicole,
important.
for us, say again at the very beginning, what was the superpower you said every woman should have?
Delegation.
Delegation. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What Nicole said, I think my superpower would be relinquish control. Learn to relinquish control.
That's
And
good.
that ties into what Nicole just said, because in order to be successful, in order to be able to see your dreams really come to life and come to fruition, and your life really coalesce in a way that really is of your portrait, right? Your dream life, you need to be able to trust in others and relinquish the control, because naturally superwomen, then we have to fix everything. We only can manage to do everything right. Nobody can wash the floors like we can. Nobody can write the contracts like we do. And that's not possible. We're not masters of everything, right? So we need to get comfortable with letting go of some of that control and that need for control, and understand, why do we have that need in the first place, right? Get with that inner self again. There's a lot of inner work that needs to happen as superwoman, to release the label and to not want to identify as a superwoman, right? Because society in a way has kind of convinced us that being a superwoman is a must. Like, you know, being successful is equated to being a superwoman, and that myth we need to chop down completely. So relinquish control would be mine.
That's good.
Awesome. Thanks, Kassandra.
Mine is you are enough, right? Like you are enough just as you are. That's what I would tell, you know, a friend who I felt like was on the edge. And so often when we're in that striving, and so I hear all this, I'm grinding, I'm hustle. No. Right? You know, it's a pull and not a push. And what I mean by that is, when you are on the path where you are creating most value for others and finding value in yourself, then it's not struggle. And so part of it is needing nothing attracts everything. So I really want women to get this. It's that need to be here or there, or feel like you got to do this or that, or watching. So, you know, I think social media really can suck us into that, right? Because we're seeing, you know, before, back in the day, you wouldn't know that your friend was out with your other friend, but you know, now they off. Well, how come they didn't invite me? And so there's all of that going on, right? And so the bottom line is, you are enough all by yourself. And to your point, Kassandra, is that when you can get comfortable with quietness, with being still, with not needing to do anything, right? That's true peace. And so at the end of the day, I think that is the goal. Peace at whatever level, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at.
Yeah.
Wow. Good stuff. Ladies, thank you very much for this evening. I mean, this conversation, I can't wait to watch the replay, because there were so many good nuggets, and I saw Tina was taking some notes. I just want to thank you all for giving of your time and of yourselves and sharing your stories with our audience. I fully believe that someone is gonna make a better choice with how they're spending their time, how they're treating themselves as a result of our conversation. Really quickly, I just want to let everyone know that's watching the replay or watching us live that our next topic of conversation for the month of June is going to be kidpreneurs. how to
Oh,
raise a
yay.
mini mogul.
I'll be
Yeah, I've
tuning
met
in.
some pretty cool ladies who are now teaching their children entrepreneurship. And it's my hope that as a result of our conversation tonight, that they will also train up their children to handle their entrepreneurial journeys responsibly and to still be kids and yet have an opportunity to live out their passion. So all of your social media contacts, we've posted them in our connections, and so everyone can reach out to you. And I thank you all again. Any final comments before we wrap up our time?
I just want to say thank you, Brandy, for inviting all of us. This topic is, there needs to be some transparency around it. And I just want to thank the other panelists for being so vulnerable and sharing, what can be a pretty tough topic to be transparent about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same. Thank you to Black Girl Fem Magic. The organization itself was very needed, and so thank you guys for spearheading that. And yes, thank you to the other panelists. I love to see other women of color in the space, just opening doors and breaking glass ceilings and doing all the things that you guys are doing. So it was a pleasure to be on the live with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks so much for the opportunity again. It's a pleasure. And, Brandy, you're doing amazing work. So we need to really commend you for what you do, because behind the scenes, most people don't see the behind the scenes, right? And there's so much that you know what I mean? It's so really, truly, thank you for inviting me and being a part of this wonderful panel. Deborah, Nicole, it's been a pleasure as well. And let's continue to support one another, because there's so many forces that are against us. So we need to be for one another. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Kassandra. And I do, when you mention team, I do need to shout out my team, because I don't make this magic happen by myself. Tina Wilkin and Terry Igioma, they are super supportive, and they help me hold all this together, because we're also entrepreneurs ourselves, in addition to doing Black Girl Fem Magic. And so when I saw this topic about being a superwoman, I was like, I'm so glad that I have them on my team. So shout out to my girls who helped make this magic happen. All right, everyone. Thank you again for us tonight, and stay tuned for our next talk show, which will be in June, where we'll talk about kidpreneurs and raising mini moguls. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.